Hey, let's go to those primaries. Huge news. Want to bring in Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Karl, I got to tell you, I'm thinking Steve Martin last night, and perhaps this is the end of the wild and crazy guy period in American politics.
Well, maybe. If you're talking about West Virginia, that may be right, because Don Blankenship, who dominated the media here the last 10 days or so of the election from the Fox News debate through last night, came in a distant third, and frankly, as a Republican who wants to keep the Senate, that's good news.
Yeah, you know, were you surprised at how adamant President Trump was pushing back against Blankenship? We know the RNC stood back, although we know top-level Republicans were funneling money to his opponents. But the president himself sort of drawing a line in the sand, say, hey, you know what? Bombastic is not enough, right? We need to win not only primaries, but the general elections as well.
Yeah, look, I think Alabama was a clarifying moment for President Trump. He realized, we got the wrong candidate, and we got a Democrat in the special election down there, and he didn't want to lose a great opportunity. Remember, he carried West Virginia by 42 points in 2016. Hey, incidentally, there's something. Speaking of West Virginia, we're missing another story in West Virginia. Joe Manchin, through the 31st of March, spent $1.2 million in the Democratic primary. His opponent, a woman named Paula Jean Swearingen, spent $130,000. He got 112,000 votes, 70% of the vote, but she got 30% of the vote and 48,000 votes. This says to me, as an incumbent, he's got some problems back home. Maybe these are people who agreed with his opponent in the primary that he was not liberal enough, but some of them may be sort of conservative Democrats who say you're not with Trump enough. And what's also interesting is this has been a historically Democrat state where the number of people who vote in the Democratic primary is much, much larger than vote in the Republican primary. But 160,000 people voted in the Democratic primary, 136,000 voted in the Republican primary, biggest primary ever for a U.S. Senate race in the Republican side in West Virginia in history.
Karl, is it possible that in addition to West Virginia, that the GOP could win from what you saw last night, other Democratic-held Senate seats right now?
Well, the even better news in Indiana with Mike Braun, who was an outsider. He'd served in the state legislature, but was a business guy, ran as an outsider, cleaned the clock of two accomplished Republican members of the U.S. House of Representatives, won nearly 50% of the vote in a three-way race, and goes into the general election with a very positive message. And interestingly enough, the party there is unified, where Blankenship is talked about maybe doing a write-in campaign in West Virginia. All three candidates in Indiana are united behind the idea of beating Democrat Joe Donnelly in the fall. So that's another good opportunity for the Republicans. Now, there's also Ohio, which what's interesting to me is the Republican nominee there is a friend of mine named Jim Renacci. He served in the House. I helped him in his first campaign for Congress. He won, albeit not with a majority of the vote. Mike Gibbons, and a business guy, an outsider, came in second. But what's interesting to me is, look at this. 819,000 people voted in the Republican primary for governor in Ohio. They had a contested primary. So did the Democrats, 671,000. That says that at least in Ohio, the enthusiasm gap is working for the advantage of the Republicans.
If the enthusiasm gap might be a myth, and maybe the blue wave might be a myth, certainly Renacci also got an endorsement from President Trump as well. Karl, love it. Love your whiteboards. We'll see you again real soon.